For some of us, the weekend just means we work a little bit more. Weekend is usually good for the Rakestraw family. Dad is out getting paid. I do have a Sunday off. I had planned to use the first syllable of my last name. It was leaf removal weekend at the Rakestraw household. I think my wife has ADD, which for me is a good thing because I'm driving back last night. I was Greg Rakestraw, by the way, filling in for Jake Query here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan, and leaves are in piles in my front yard. I'm like, sweetie, that was what Sunday was for. So I'm hoping she gets really annoyed with the piles that she sees this afternoon, and they are all gone. And then legitimately, I get a Sunday off. I love my job. Believe it or not, I actually do desire to have a social life and do things that the normal folks do when they're not working on Friday evening and Saturday afternoon. I don't have a gig tomorrow after 4 o'clock. I figure calling 131st Monon Bell Classic is good enough. No Saturday night gig for me. I have like a 48-hour window. Like I have shore leave or something. I'm in the military coming up this weekend. I will figure out something to do. But much as we talked about yesterday on the program, do not mistake the Colts not playing on Sunday for a lack of activity. There are a lot of other things that we can talk about. By the way, I think I look the best I have looked on the studio live cam because as I look over the shoulder of Nathaniel Finch, things have gone dark. I'm much better looking in the dark. So I think for those of you that are watching, you're now listening on YouTube, but you're not seeing me on YouTube, and that's probably better for everybody involved. I didn't shave. It's back. I'm sorry. That wasn't a radio tease. That was just a tease. You have to look at me. Great. Oh, now you got to look at me again. Sorry about this. This is what happens when talent can see those things. It is still an all-you Indy edition of the show. Eddie Garrison is taking the day off, just like the Pacers took the entire Western Conference road trip off. And again, I am probably less critical than other voices I have heard on the station, but man, that is a brutal watch right now. And last night just continued to be further indicative of how the season has gone for the Pacers. Aaron Nesmith gets hurt in the third quarter, and by that point, I went to bed. When that happened, I'm like, okay, I've seen enough for tonight. Things just got worse. I think the final score was 133-98 at the end of that one last night. And I saw where Kristen Arian was calling the game via a cell phone by the time we got to the fourth quarter. So apparently they either lost power down by where the announcers are in Phoenix. Nathaniel and I are radio guys by trade, even though I'm more in the streaming business myself these days. Every play-by-play guy has at some point in time in their life, and Nathaniel knows exactly where I'm going and starts nodding his head. We've all called the game off of a cell phone. And again, for those of you that are watching on the stream, we have all done one of these at some point in time because equipment has failed. We call the studio and say, hey, pot up the phone line. I'm going to start talking. And so apparently that also works from a television standpoint as well. Yikes. But I don't have any Pacers guests lined up because, frankly, I don't think we need to rehash what's going on. And with the amount of injuries they have had, and it just starts to pile up and cascade. And whomever coined this phrase, whether it was Dustin in writing the story or whomever did the social media for the Indianapolis Star in their story from last night, they used a phrase that wasn't a thing when I was in college. It probably was when Nathaniel was because, he went to college in this millennium and I didn't. But that would be gap year. That is what this, the Pacers should be going on walk. They should be, I'll make it a more millennial reference. They should be backpacking through Western Europe right now. They should follow the lead of Ken Adams and talk about the time they were hiking around Mount Tibidabo because that would be more fun and that would be far more productive than what the Indiana Pacers are doing on a basketball floor right now. I want to say of their 4 games of the Western Conference trip, the closest they got to beating anybody was a 17-point loss to the Nuggets. And again, I understand the reasons behind it, and it is the ultimate of legitimate excuses. It is just, and it's nobody's fault. You have that litany of injuries. I'm not sure there's anything you can do on the subject. But it is a difficult watch when you saw how wonderful it was to watch the product for a good chunk of last year, but especially in April, May, and June, when the Indiana Pacers were a joy to watch. They weren't winning ugly. They were winning beautifully. I mean, this was how the game was played, all the pieces clicking together, the way they shared the ball and moved the ball, and different guys would show up on different nights. And now it's dudes that I didn't know that were on the team. Like, the only other time that I can think of where a Pacers roster kind of looked like this, maybe you could say the end of that year, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when they won 25 games. But in terms of kind of like my prism or my experience of watching the team, it reminds you like in the immediacy after the brawl, when there were guys that were signed on Monday and played 36 minutes on Tuesday. Now, maybe you didn't have as much of that last night, but, Monte Morris is on the team, and Jeremiah Robinson Earl is on the team, and one of the Martin kids is on the team. And, of course, he signs and then gets sick and doesn't play in the last game because that's kind of the way this season has gone. But gap year may be the way to describe it. And I'm not trying to panic in the moment, because I was very much against those that were, hey, you should go ahead and trade Pascal Siakam now. No. You've got good pieces here. Don't blow it up. Hold the fort until Tyrese gets back in 26-27. And now we're, 12 games in, because the Pacers are 1-11 or 1-12 at this point, Nathaniel?
11.
So they've played 12 games. There are 70 games left to go in the season. And you're just like, I have to watch this 70 more times. And again, I almost feel like I have to apologize to my friends, the Pacers, for saying that, because they did everything right to get that team to the point where it was last year, where you're one injury away from claiming a world championship. And now, is the best way to describe that. It's painful to watch that last night. Thankfully, I was able to watch Purdue, Alabama before that. And that was the opposite. Now, I didn't get to watch the entire thing, but I watched a good chunk of the second half. And if Purdue had lost that game, I probably would have sold you, you know what, it's not that important. In part because, A, they're so experienced, and B, that season is so long that how you're playing on November the 14th doesn't necessarily translate how you're playing on January the 14th, and doesn't translate how you're playing in March 14th. But most importantly for this group, how you're playing on Easter weekend, because that's what it's about. After Purdue finally made that Final Four 2 years ago, now it has become, okay, great, now go win a national championship. And when you have guys that have been there forever, as Trey Kaufman-Renn, as Braden Smith, as Fletcher Lawyer, it's almost championship or bust. And I hate feeling that way, but that's kind of what it is for Purdue, which is why if they had lost that game, I said, well, all right, maybe there's some things that are concerning. But the fact and the fashion in which they won that game, after seeing a 7-point lead evaporate, scoring the last 7 points of the game, find a way to get it done, and to do so in something you see on seemingly a fewer and fewer basis, and that is a true road environment. For as great as the Indiana win was at Marquette, wasn't a true road environment. This was not a game in an NBA arena. This was not a made-for-television thing. This was, we're going to play each other in a home and home because we know you're good and we know we're good, and we want to have this showcase game to get us ready for a national championship game, for a Final Four, for an Elite Eight, a Sweet 16. That's what sort of game that was, except it wasn't a neutral environment like an NCAA tournament game would be. That was like a conference. It was like a Big Ten game that Purdue played for their third game of the season and went out and won. And Braden Smith, every time he takes the ball inside, you're like, and again, I covered Braden as a high school junior and senior, so, and that, which is now 4 years ago, but still, I saw more of him than most did before he got to Purdue. And you just go, How is that dude going to finish this? I mean, you see him driving in, and you're like, that guy's a foot bigger than he is. Where does he find the passing angle? How is he going to make that play happen? Well, from a jump shot standpoint, he didn't. He was 7 of 19, but he was 5 of 10 from 3. He was 10 of 12 from the free throw line. He had 29 points. Maybe the most jaw-dropping stat of the game is the fact that Braden Smith had 7 rebounds in last night's game. I mean, it can be a big 3. It was really kind of a big 2 last night with key contributions from others. Like, the two things that stuck with me about Purdue's win last night was, again, the way they closed the game, because it was about to go in the opposite direction when 80-73 became 80-80 late in that contest. And we had the long replay review for a potential shot clock violation, which was the correct call. He missed it by like a tenth of a second. By the way, I realize the money in Alabama goes to the football team, but hey, if you could go ahead and invest in the backboards that have the lights on them and not just the shot clock behind it, that'd be kind of great. We can get to playing a little bit quicker if you spend just a little bit of money on the basketball facility and not everything on the football team. Thank you very much. But Smith was great. Kaufman-Wren was great. Clough did what you needed him to do. I thought Jacobson in limited minutes had some big buckets late. But one of the things that you would hear about, and maybe if not on the radio, maybe this was in my mind, because when I left here yesterday, I am fortunate enough to be on the board of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. And so when I left here yesterday, drove straight to Newcastle. I got to hang out in the museum, the boardroom, et cetera, for like 3 hours. Not a bad gig that I get to have. I shouldn't complain about working like Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays when that's part of the gig that I do. But when I'm there, you know what I try to do? Is not say much. You know why? The old basketball coaches will say a lot, and I can listen and learn some things from them. Like, one of the things that strikes me when I'm in a board meeting, I go, I'm pretty sure I'm the worst basketball player in this group of 50 or 60 people around me. Because a lot of them were coaches. They were pretty good players at one point in time as well. So I'm kind of listening, and one of the things that I hear the guys talk about that I was hanging out with yesterday was just how big and how physical this Alabama team was. Talking about like the Alabama-St. John's game over the course of the weekend. How physical that game was. Well, you know what Purdue did last night? I mean, you probably know the final score by now, 87-80. But of all of these superlatives that I could give you about Purdue's win last night, and by the way, Bobby Buckets, Bobby Riddell, Purdue Radio Network will join us at 1 o'clock to talk about the win. Purdue went on the road to one of the top 10 teams in the country, a hostile environment for sure, and they out-rebounded them 52-28. I pause for dramatic effect to let that sink in. Like I was talking about the IU Indy story yesterday, and I said, hey, they shot 45 threes in a 40-minute game. And again, Nathaniel's eyes just popped open as soon as I said that. They outscored a team 51-10 on points off turnovers, forced 36 turnovers, certain numbers that pop off the page at you. When I'm usually doing a show like this, I try not to be that guy that reads you the box score because you're capable of doing that, but I have it in front of me just so I can emphasize the numbers that catch your attention. Purdue out-rebounded the 8th-ranked team in the country, one that is thought to be one of the best teams in the SEC. I'm not sure how much of a qualifier you need more than they're the 8th-ranked team in the country, but there you go. And they out-rebounded them by 24. They had 2 guys that had double-digit rebounds. Again, Trey Kaufman-Wren, 19 and 15. Oscar Clough didn't have a double-double in terms of points. He only scored 9. He had 11 boards. He did his job, the former South Dakota State Jackrabbit. And Braden Smith had 7. Braden Smith, go ahead and say it like Charles Dutton's character in Rudy. 5 foot nothing, 100-pound nothing. Had 3 more rebounds than any player for Alabama had in last night's game.
You hear what Nate Oates said?
I didn't hear it, but I have heard the inference, so please feel free to share it with me. There you go. Maybe why I channel that reference. So I'm not sure how much stock to put in November college basketball And again, not because that wasn't a quality team and a great win. And believe me, and I think it was Jimmy Dykes with Tom Hart on the broadcast last night on ESPN2. The word resume win was used, and that is absolutely 9,000% accurate. That was a resume win for Purdue. So, like, when you're watching the Boilermakers play in late January and February, and the graphic pops up, here's what their strength of schedule is. Here's whatever net ranking. Here's the metrics that the tournament team, the committee is using, these days. And it says key wins. One of the first ones you will see is Alabama. All right. Teams are so different between now and the end of the season. I'm not trying to get too giddy or hyped up about this. For Purdue, everything is about positioning to be as good of a seed as you can be, to give you the most advantageous route to get back to here, to get to Lucas Oil Stadium and play a Final Four in your backyard. Last night was a great step, first step really, in that positioning to come back home. That's what everything is about for this Purdue basketball team this year. So we'll talk to Bobby Buckets about that coming up at 1 o'clock. We will talk more college basketball on the show because in the building, we have both the Indiana Hoosiers and we have the Butler Bulldogs. They're on Fuego tomorrow. Now, it is still, that's 92.7 FM for those of you that are not in the know. It is still weird for me to think that Butler is going to play an ACC team tomorrow when they are playing at SMU. Southern Methodist, the opposition for the Bulldogs tomorrow. Mark Minner will have the call. We'll talk to Mark coming up, in fact, in the next segment of the show. Tonight is high school football Friday night for me. I have 3 more of those before it's the full transition to the basketball season. Basketball is starting to creep more into my life from a play-by-play standpoint. I've got 3 more Friday nights in the gridiron and 2 more of those of the outdoor variety. My game this evening on MyNDTV 23 and stream free on ihsaatv.org is Center Grove and Warren Central. 7 o'clock is the covered start time. Lance Scheib joins me on that. Kyle Neddenrip will join us coming up at 1:30. And again, I will see if he and I are at the same game. If I had to take a flyer on what game Kyle is going to be at, and maybe he's already announced this on social media. If he has, I missed it. Sorry, Kyle. My guess would be he is going to Brownsburg Decatur Central, would be my guess. But I've been wrong before. I'm wrong all the time, yet they still have me in this chair from time to time. So Kyle and I will talk regional matchups. If that's something you want to discuss, 317-239-1070, whether it's voice or text, hit me up on Twitter, at Greg Rakestraw. Even email the show, too, greg@1070thefan.com. Kevin Bowen will be joining us. For a guy whose wife just had a baby and the Colts are on a bye, he's working too damn much this week. And I said, listen, I know you're usually on the program. You don't have to be on the show. He's like, no, I'm good. So KB, I was on his show. I guess he can be on my show. That's kind of the way it works around here, right? We just talk to each other a lot. Kevin Bowie on the program at 2 o'clock as we'll talk a variety of things with him. And we will kind of take a look around the National Football League. I know we've got a couple of games for you. Chargers are the 1 o'clock game that we have, and I spaced on whom they are playing. Chiefs and Broncos are the 4:30 game that we have. So there will be an NFL football doubleheader you can hear on the Fan and listen as you're out doing yard work, as I plan to be doing. The honeydew list gets cleared on my Sunday off. Jake has chimed in for a segment. Jake has his Feel Good Fridays that he does each and every week. And I know a little bit of the backstory of the person that he is going to be talking to. Her name is Addie Haberthy, and she is a Roncalli Royal. She is heading to play volleyball at Xavier, and she tore her ACL in August, right before the season started. And Roncalli, who was probably the best team overall in the state last year, won 3A. Won 3A again, probably weren't as dominant, but still 3A state champs. Well, a big part of that is that you just had a Division I player, of which Roncalli has multiple on that team, but you just lost one of your best players right before the season started. Well, Addie was able to serve the final point of the season at Gamebridge last Saturday in their championship victory against Bishop Dwenger. And there's great video of this. There was a very kind of ginger dog pile at the end of that point. Basically, like a teammate almost like dropped and rolled her to like steer her into the dog pile to not do any further damage to that knee, when she had surgery 3 months ago. But she was on the court for 1 point the entire season. And she's going to talk to Jake about that coming up. So Jake does make an appearance in the program coming up a little bit after that. Yesterday on the show, I hope you enjoyed it. We talked to both coaches of the Monon Bell Classic. That's what I've been gearing up for all week long. Monon Bell 131, Wabash versus DePaul. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock on the ISC Sports Network. If you're going to be at the game, come up and say hello. You know, I'll let you a little bit behind the curtain here. Normally when I'm doing like a high school football game, I'm there about 2 hours out. High school basketball, maybe an hour and a half, hour 15 out. Knowing the flow of humanity around the Wabash College campus, and the same thing holds true when the game is in Greencastle at Blackstock Stadium. I'm like, I need to get there a little bit sooner to kind of work my way around people. So I'll be in Crawfordsville from like 10 a.m. on tomorrow. So if you're going to the game, I'll be in the press box. I'll be kind of hanging around the truck, hanging around the stadium. Come find a way to come say hello. We'll talk it up. And my goodness, 3 years ago for this game, there was 5 inches of snow on the ground. Like 6 days ago, there was 2 inches of snow on the ground. I'm wearing my standard ISC lightweight hoodie and a pair of sweats, and I feel like I'm overdressed right now. Finchy is over here. Did anybody, because you're a little bit young for American Pie, but my guess is there have been just a few last name, nickname references to you from the great character in American Pie over the years, correct?
Yeah, and the guy walking just behind us right there, BK, calls me out all the time.
Yeah, stay away from the ficus, okay? So Finchy, as I'll go first from this point in time forward, tells me I had to do an about facing home and put like shorts and sandals on today. It is that level of day, and tomorrow the temperature is going to be 70. You know, I've tried to like dress for this game like it's almost like a fireside chat. Like it's been like blazer, sweater, and shirt and tie for this game. I think the sweater is right out. I'm worried about, you know, just the jacket and shirt and tie being too much given the temperature tomorrow. A beautiful day, whether you're going to Crawfordsville for the Bell game, whether you're going to Bloomington for senior day for that amazing group down at Indiana University who's put together such back-to-back seasons. And again, it is almost weird to think of Indiana and Wisconsin being so lopsided in favor of Indiana. That was the case in like the glory days of the late 80s and early 90s, although for as good as those days were, the glory days are right now for Indiana football. Maybe we got to change what we call the Bill Mallory era. They were the glory days. They've been topped. That's how good the last couple of years have been. And I'm curious if almost a lesson was learned at Penn State, because Penn State and Wisconsin are kind of in similar boats. You know, Wisconsin has been trending that direction for the last handful of years. And it certainly has the feel that there's going to be an administration change at Wisconsin at the end of the season. They'll say thanks, no thanks to Luke Fickell, and they'll kind of start back over again. But that program's at a low point that probably you got to go back to the beginning of the Barry Alvarez days in the early 90s. You know, Penn State was a much more dramatic fall and resulted in James Franklin being shown the door, and the Nittany Lions are now, 0-6 in terms of Big Ten play. Wisconsin just got their first win. The Hoosiers brought their A game when they had to find the win on the road. And again, A, they stayed undefeated. B, they had never won in Happy Valley before last Saturday. You kind of wonder, does IU go to school on that performance? Wisconsin defensively is pretty good. Offensively, they're not. But can Indiana save some of the late game dramatics from a week ago? And then once you do that, knowing that, again, if you do things right these last couple of weeks, you're not playing a home game again because you're not playing in the opening round of the college football playoff. You're going straight to the bowl round. You're going straight to New Year's Eve and January 1st after you play Ohio State again at Lucas Oil Stadium. So if your last game of the season at home and you're the better team, Can you do something that Wisconsin has had a habit of doing to you? And that's running it up. Are we looking at that scenario? After last week, you're probably saying, let's just win the game and not worry about that. But 62-10 and 83-20. Just a couple of reminders of the not too distant past between Indiana and Wisconsin. Just some food for thought going into that game. The weather's going to be great. The beatdown might be as well. 317-239-1070 is the phone number. That's voice or text. If you know the bat phone, feel free to hit me up on that. We can chat. No big deal. Mark Minner, he has as big of a love for sweater vests as I do. Not sure you can rock one on a warm day in Dallas. We'll find out. We'll actually talk some Butler basketball with him, too. It's Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jake Query. Back in a moment. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. head coach Jake Gilbert. We had DePaul head coach Brett Dietz, and we played their school's fight songs as we led them in to the segment. That is not the Butler War song, just to make sure that I'm sure Blue 4 loves it and digs the song, and I'm sure social media has done something with the Baja men. That is not the Butler fight song. Just wanted to make sure we specified that. It is wonderful to have the Bulldogs back in the Radio 1 family, even if most of their games so far have been on the Spanish station, 92.7. They will be on the fan soon enough. I'll see if Mark Minner, A, how his Sweater Fest are doing, and B, how his Espanol is as he joins us right now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. It has been too long, my friend. How are you?
Buenos dias. I'm doing well. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm good. I think you're barely old enough to remember the days of Dan Patrick on SportsCenter and in Fuego. Have you worked it into a call just yet on 92.7?
We're in the lab right now tinkering with it. Gardner and I. We've got a lot of opportunity this season, and I'll tell you what, the Bulldogs were in Fuego in the first 3 games, so there were a lot of opportunities.
I'm gonna say, as the
there will be more.
As the IU Indy guy, trust me, 112 points. I know you had plenty of chance to work on things, in that. And again, this is the nature of major college basketball. You can ease your way into the schedule. It picks up as of now. What have you learned about the Bulldogs so far?
Yeah, I think it really does pick up. The first 3 games, they took care of business. Each of those by 30 or more points. And so you look at what this rendition of the Bulldogs roster is and what you hear from Thad Matta this summer. It's a deeper team, a more athletic team that likes being around each other, playing together. You've got a mix of top 25 freshman class with some key transfers. You've got a few key returners. So it's a balanced group and coaching staff with a lot of continuity. I think everybody was really excited about what this team could do this summer. And so far through 3 games, we've seen those different elements. It's been deep in the sense that you've got essentially 11 guys averaging 12 or more minutes. It's been athletic, full display. Rebounding margin's been incredible through the first 3 games. But again, you're playing at home and you're playing against teams that you should beat in those games. Michael Ajayi's been as advertised, 3 double-doubles through his first 3 games. Finley Bizjack averaging almost 15 points, had 5 first-half threes against Chicago State. So, and this freshman class has gotten a lot of play with those margins getting a little bit wider in those games. So a lot of good things to be excited about through the first few games. And now you go on the road to SMU, an ACC opponent, and that's your first true road test. They've played all these games at Hinkle Fieldhouse, including the exhibitions, and then you go out to the Greenbrier the following week with South Carolina and Virginia. So next 3 come quickly.
Obviously, I'm a little partial to the guys that are from here because I have covered them as a high school player, or in Jalen Jackson's case, as both a high school and a college player. And he put up good numbers at UIC, put up great numbers at Purdue Fort Wayne. And I know from a physicality standpoint, I think he's got that physicality to be able to play at a Big East level as well. Early returns on what sort of player he's going to be for the Bulldogs all season long.
I think people are incredibly excited. Yeah, you mentioned Jalen Jackson's sisters, by the way, play for Butler women's basketball team as well. And Jalen, who averaged 19 points last year at Purdue Fort Wayne, he's got that. You talk about that physicality, that size, the experience of veteran point guard for the Bulldogs. He's been battling a little bit of an ankle right now, but when he's been on the floor, you can tell the impact that he makes. He certainly makes his teammates better. He can score in so many different ways. And I think that's something that last year, you look back at last year's Bulldog team, and they were missing a Jalen Jackson. It allows Finley Bizjack to be a little bit more comfortable. Stink Rob, you're talking about another local kid, Stink here from Lawrence North, as a freshman point guard to be able to learn from, work with, support off the bench. Jalen Jackson's a big piece. So him being healthy, him being able to be out there on the floor is certainly a big catalyst. It was one of the first pickups the Bulldogs got in the portal. Actually, we were out in Las Vegas as part of the Crown last year. So a big piece, big impact this summer, and certainly somebody that has already proven himself at the Division I level. Now trying to bring his talents down to Indianapolis inside Hinkle Fieldhouse.
And again, my guess would be I would have called about 40 of Stink Robinson's games at Lawrence North over the last 4 seasons. And feel free to use a variation of this because this obviously was developing during the season. It happened during the course of the season. And I would always say, listen, if you're the leading scorer in the history of Lawrence North High School, and your high school includes Mike Conley Jr., Greg Oden, and Eric Montross, you can really play. Again, I know it's early. I'm so happy that he is getting a role immediately. What does his role need to be for this team to be successful this year, Mark?
Well, he's of the very talented freshmen. He's been called on, and he's going to be called on in a very big way. He is backing up Jalen Jackson off the bench at that point guard spot. And as mentioned, if Jalen's a little bit hampered by that ankle injury, he's going to be thrust even more into a spotlight. Offensively, being able to run the offense, he's been able to knock down shots. He's a capable offensive player. Where defensively, you knew he was capable. It has been so fun to watch him. He is so scrappy. He is so pesky. He stays low. He is able to create havoc, on-ball pressure. And his intensity that he brings not only in practice into the game, the immediate boost. You talk about, obviously, his impact leading scorer at Lawrence North. I mean, you said it all there, but how does he translate quickly into the college game? His work ethic, his unmatched coaching staff absolutely loves him. And so I'm excited to see, but he will have a big role for this Butler Bulldogs team. And, I think the other thing is he's a guy that at the end of the day, what you're looking for is somebody when they step onto that floor every time, they bring it with 110%. And he does that.
SMU, what sort of challenge do the Mustangs present tomorrow afternoon?
Really good test. This is a home and home, the repeat of the home and home. Butler got the victory last year over SMU. Andy Enfield coaching that Mustang squad. This is a really, talking about talented freshman classes, the top 5 freshman class for SMU, but they bring back some talented players. Boopie Miller is the player to watch for them, 21 points per game. You got Boopie, you got Finley Bizjack, you got great names in the backcourt in tomorrow's matchup in Dallas. But this is a team that also leads the country right now in free throws made per game. Now, again, everything's early, but you start to see some trends. These are 2 teams in Butler and SMU that have had really fast, top 20 offensive possession, tempo. But this team is going to get to the line. And so if you're Butler, you've got to be able to defend without fouling. They're going to get to the line. I said 27 makes per game. That leads the country. They do have some veteran players. They brought in a transfer from Jacksonville State, who was one of the leading scorers last season in all of college basketball. And this really, for both these 2 teams, is their first test of the year. SMU did get a good win over Murray State, which is a top 150 team and always a really good college basketball program for sure. But in terms of high major opponents, we'll see what these 2 teams have in store. For Butler, it's can you continue to do more of the same? Can you continue to have balance? Can Michael Ajayi continue to impact the game? Continue to rebound at the rate that you've been rebounding? Obviously not, going to necessarily expect 20 margins throughout the season, but can you be aggressive on the glass? And again, can you limit the fouls in this game? Because that is what they're looking to do. They're not looking to shoot the 3 as much. They're looking to drive it into the lane.
Not that your broadcast is weather dependent, being indoors tomorrow, but what is the projected high temperature in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex tomorrow afternoon?
Inside, I'm not sure what it's going to be outside yet. Inside, I expect a balmy 72 or something like that.
All right,
so I will be. Go.
I was going to say,
here's my thing.
You know where
Greg,
this is. You know where this is going. I stick with the gimmick every time we talk. So, sweater, vest, or no tomorrow afternoon.
Absolutely. Does the day end in Y? I'll be there. And now, Greg, I did hear you got Mona and Bell tomorrow, and you were talking about sweater, non-sweater. I caught that before.
Yeah.
Just mixing a vest for yourself.
That's what I have normally gone full length because, frankly, at DePaul we're outdoors. Now we're covered, but we're outdoors. At Wabash we have our own booth, so I'm thinking about going sleeveless vest and then just kind of ditching the jacket when I'm off camera. This is the sort of things that once I'm prepped for the game, these are the things that go through my mind. Just like the next question I'm about to ask you. It appears you're spending Thanksgiving at the Greenbrier Resort. Have you checked out what the Thanksgiving menu is going to be for you guys next Thursday?
I have not picked the menu yet. It is my first time going to the Greenbrier, so I'm super excited. I've heard a lot of really cool things out there. You've been out there. Do you have any advice
No.
For me and Nick.
It's
None.
it's the Greenbrier. It's like one of the best resorts in the country. Whatever they serve is going to be great. Enjoy it and eat it.
Yeah.
Final thing, the next time the Bulldogs are at home, I know sometimes, you look over and see who the television talent is. You may not know who it is. When the Bulldogs are at Hinkle in 2 weeks, you're going to know who the guy sitting in that seat is because it's the guy you're talking to right now. So be kind to that guy when you see him for the Wright State game, okay?
I love that, Greg. And that just means we're going to have to get together beforehand and catch up.
Exactly.
We have do some combined prep.
We have an excuse to have either a beverage or another type of beverage at some point in time between the next couple of weeks. Buddy, it's good. It's good to catch up with you. Give Nick my best, and I will see you a couple of weeks from now, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. Look forward to seeing you at Hinkle.
You got it. Mark Menner, the voice of the Bulldogs again. It's great for the program that they're back on this radio station or these radio stations. There was a point where they were just streaming. It was frankly a previous athletic partner of Butler that is no longer the case. I let as many folks in that building know, hey, you got to fix this. And they did. So good on Butler for doing that. When the games aren't on this radio station, The Fan, go to 92.7 FM. That's where you're going to find the Bulldogs for the next several games. The next time the Bulldogs are on here will be on Tuesday, December the 2nd, when they take on Eastern Michigan at Hinkle at 7 o'clock. And yes, if you tune in to watch the Bulldogs against Wright State on Friday, November the 28th, I'll be doing the game on ESPN+. And I'll talk more about that maybe at some point in time later today, at some point in time as we get closer to the game, because frankly, I'm filling in for Jake next Tuesday as well. We are late in getting to a break. I'll remedy that now. Back with more in a moment. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Just getting warmed up on this Friday afternoon. Greg Rakestraw in for Jake Query. Again, he is going to Austria. Not like Kangaroos and Fosters, like Hills Are Live with the Sound of Music, Austria. That one is where he is at. He and Shannon enjoying a little downtime. He'll be back as of Wednesday. You get me filling in today. You get Derek filling in on Monday. I am back on Tuesday. Jake will be back on Wednesday. And for that, I'm sure there'll be much rejoicing in his Query and company. Neither the Query nor the company are here today because I assume that's Eddie's, he's the company at this point. Eddie was briefly the producer of Soccer Saturday. So I would refer to him as Garcisinho, as if it was his brilliant Brazilian name. If you're a soccer nerd, you know that Vincent company with a K, was one of the better players of his generation. I need to get Eddie one of his football shirts. That way he can just be the company when he's sitting here next to Jake Query. We just had Mark Minner on the show. Again, you can catch Butler and SMU tomorrow on 92.7 FM Fuego. Locally, you can watch the game on Wish TV as it's going to be on the CW. Most games, especially as we get kind of into December and into January, et cetera, you can catch on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Kind of ran short of my time with Mark, but it's a real simple equation, okay? Either you make the NCAA tournament or you don't. In other words, that's the line of demarcation for what makes a good season, is getting this program back to being an at-large representative or nobody's against winning the Big East tournament or winning the Big East. Now, do I think Butler has talent to do that? Probably not. Can they be an NCAA tournament team? I think they can. But again, how the game is played differently now, and we are now in year, doing the math here. This pause is me counting fingers and toes and flipping the Rolodex in my head. This is the 13th year that Butler has been in the Big East. Okay? So playing a lot of major college competition should not be new from a Butler fan standpoint. But frankly, what this does is this kind of shows you how the math has changed in terms of how teams schedule, much like Indiana playing Marquette on Sunday, Purdue going to Alabama and playing last night, that the next three games for Butler are against ACC, SEC, and ACC competition. Then you have a couple of guarantee games. I'm not sure what the Boise State game is, if that's, again, a guarantee game, meaning you're paying somebody to come play you and not returning the date. But you got Boise State from the Mountain West, who will be in the Pac-12 next year, or some facsimile of the Pac-12. Then you get to Big East play. Then you play a Big Ten team in Northwestern as part of the Indy Classic. And you've got one more bye game, non-conference game, then it's nothing but Big East games. In other words, the three-game build-up to get to this point, there's only a couple of games like that left for Butler. The majority of their games will be against teams that are NCAA tournament teams or trying to get their way and have a legitimate shot of being NCAA tournament teams. So Butler has looked great. They've won the games by 30, 32, and 32. The fewest points they have scored is 88. We're going to learn a lot more tomorrow. That continues against South Carolina on Friday. That continues against Virginia on Sunday. And yes, I am fortunate to have the call of the game against Wright State coming up on November the 28th. On ESPN+. All right, we will get back to this at some point in time, but it's weird to have you have it every year, but especially when the Colts have been deemed to be the not ready for primetime players. You're used to this being kind of like the factory. Every Sunday the Colts are playing 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, occasionally Sunday night game, occasionally Wednesday night game. But for the first time so far this year, it is a Sunday without the Indianapolis Colts. Here are the games that matters. Bucks, Bills, 1 o'clock. Texans, Titans matters kind of, sort of, because it's two divisional foes. Yes, the Texans beat the Jaguars, which was very much a solid for the Indianapolis Colts last week, but it's still Davis Mills that is the starting quarterback and not C.J. Stroud. So the Texans enter this week 3.5 games back of the Colts with 2 games left to play against the Colts. So again, it matters. Bengals Steelers matters because, again, the Steelers have beaten the Colts, so having that tiebreaker against the team, the Steelers haven't exactly backed up their win against the Colts with how they played the following week. Chargers Jaguars definitively matters for the Colts. That, too, is a 1 o'clock game. And maybe Ravens Browns to a certain degree, but obviously Chiefs Broncos is a big deal, given that's whom the Colts play when they come back. And, again, given the fact that if the Broncos win, they're back to being a half game up on the Colts, as the Patriots now are with what they did with their win a night ago against the Jets 27-14. So plenty of football to watch on Sunday for Colts fans. Plenty of college football to digest for fans of any kind here in the state tomorrow. And we talked a lot about yesterday was kind of football day. Today seemingly is basketball day. We'll double back to football coming up a little bit later on the program. We owe you a quick timeout. When we come back, more about Purdue's win in Tuscaloosa. The man on the radio network call, not as the play-by-play guy, but as the analyst, Bobby Riddell, will join us when we come back. It's Greg Rakestraw in for Jake Query, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Day, and that is things that are attached to a state or a nickname, but like aren't officially. I don't think Alabama has made this like the official state song or the fight song for the Crimson Tide, but it was the Boiler Express that ended up leaving that building at the Coliseum last night with an 87-80 victory. The man that had the call on the Purdue Radio Network, longtime player, now analyst for the Boilermakers, Bobby Riddell, a.k.a. Bobby Buckets, that joins us now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Greg. I'm doing well. Doing especially well considering last night's result.
Nah, no kidding. I know that these trips kind of become routine for you. You know, you fly in afternoon before or night before, play the game, fly out, and you're back in West Lafayette. The reason I bring that up is that when you're around Tuscaloosa for about 24 to 36 hours, were people really talking about this basketball game, or were they talking about the Sooners coming to town on Saturday?
Yeah, there was definitely, I'm sure, you kind of live in your own little bubble at the hotel,
right,
and you don't get out too much. But, yeah, I presume the fans were certainly ecstatic about the Boilers coming to town and, a top 10 clash. But we jokingly said after we were able to come out of there victorious that I'm sure their fans were disappointed, but if the football game goes their way Saturday, I'm sure they'll be much more excited about that than maybe even the loss in basketball.
Well, you talk about kind of the traveling entourage, the party, and you all kind of live on the same schedule when you're on the road. Has it struck you yet, even so early in the season, this is the last time you get to do that with people like Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and Fletcher Lawyer?
Man, yeah, it is starting to hit me a little bit. It's obviously got a long season to go, but it is pretty wild. It feels like yesterday, honestly, to me, that we flew out to Portland to play in the PK85 tournament to go against Gonzaga and Duke and all those teams, and Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer were these new freshman guards on the scene, and we obviously kind of took the country by storm there and surprised some people with Zach Edey leading the way as a junior and winning that tournament. And man, those freshman guards really just showed out in that experience. And I can't believe it's already 4 years later and these guys are seniors. It's pretty wild to think how quick it goes.
Well, again, you're spoiled by what you have seen from them. Braden and Fletcher, maybe over the course of 4 years, because of those in front of him, kind of took Trey a minute to get going, but now he is as dominant of a force as there is in terms of college basketball. Is it almost tougher to impress you because you're so used to seeing great things from especially two of those three?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Trey Kaufman-Renn, I forgot to mention him. He, of course, was on that team that went out to Portland as well. But his career has kind of been interesting, right? I was talking with him the other day, and he talked about kind of how unique it is for him and how kind of relatable he can be to all the different guys on the team as a senior captain and leader, because he really has played every role you can play within a team, right? You go from being someone who wasn't going to be in the rotation as a true freshman, so you decide to redshirt, you sit the season out, you work on your game, you work on your body, try to make improvements, and then the next year you're in that backup role, backing up a star, so you play kind of the 5 to 10 minutes a game that are available, maybe a little bit more if a certain guy gets in foul trouble ahead of you, but for the most part you're kind of playing that limited role. And then as a sophomore now he's starting, but he's not a focal point in that starting lineup playing a role. And then all of a sudden last year, he becomes a focal point, becomes that main force in the interior, and then parlayed that into his senior year. And yeah, we missed him a lot those first couple of games, his presence, both on both ends of the floor, especially on the glass. As we saw last night, he comes out and drops 15 rebounds in his first game action, regular season action of the season. Obviously provides that kind of secondary creator when he plays that two-man game with Braden Smith. He gets those pocket passes and he can facilitate, he can score. And then just having that bona fide presence on the block that obviously can score on the interior against pretty much anybody in the country if he's left one-on-one. But he's not a selfish guy either. He's very similar to Zach Edey before him. If you're going to put two guys on him, he's going to make the extra pass and punish you for doing so. So, yeah, it was great to have him back. His play in the first half was remarkable. Just the intensity and fire he came out with. I felt like A lot of us were just wanting to see this team play with a little bit more energy and intensity that we'd seen early in the season, and we really brought the fight, and I thought he was a big piece of that last night.
Bobby Riddell, again, Purdue Radio, joining us here. Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jake Query. Bobby's appearance on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Listen, I know your main concern is what these guys are doing in black and gold, but spinning it forward, listen, I think Braden Smith's an NBA guard. I think we kind of know that by now. Fletcher might be more of NBA, G League, maybe Europe. How do you see Trey's skill set and size translating at the NBA level? Because now it's more of a space and pace game and kind of open post. Does that actually help him in terms of being an NBA player? What do you think next level looks like for Trey Kaufman-Renn?
Man, that's a fascinating question, isn't it? You're right. His skill set is not something that necessarily on paper looks like it's going to translate super well to the NBA, just based on the style of play the NBA plays, with how much it prioritizes, shooting threes and finishing at the rim. Trey's kind of bread and butter is more of that mid-range game. I think somebody that he kind of reminds me of as far as a player comp is a guy, Drew Timme, who played at Gonzaga and was extremely successful as a college player there, as we all remember, and has kind of been able to have, I think, a cup of coffee here or there in the NBA. I don't believe he's currently on an active roster, but it's kind of in the mix in that kind of G League situation. And that's kind of where I see Trey projecting out, kind of in that same sort of, hey, if he can get on the right team in the right spot, if his skill set is what they're lacking, maybe there's a chance he can, find a niche on that team and provide what he does so well. But there's also a chance that if he doesn't get in the right situation with the right team, that maybe, he's kind of one of those tweeners where he just doesn't quite get that opportunity that I think we all would love to see him. I mean, I think he's such a talented player. I mean, his finishing ability is, second to none when it comes to, finishing with those floaters. I mean, we all know how difficult that shot is, and he makes it look easy. But, he's obviously not the greatest athlete in the world. As far as if he was going to try to play center at the next level, it would have to be kind of that small ball center type player. And a guy like Draymond Green has been able to play that small ball center super effectively at times throughout his career. Whether Trey can be that level of elite impact defender that Draymond is certainly something that Trey would have to try to develop into. I think Trey is a better defender than he gets credit for, but Draymond, of course, is one of the best defenders of all time at the NBA level. So it'll be interesting. He might have to try to reinvent himself in some certain ways to try to fit in at the NBA level. But I hope it happens. It'll be interesting to see. I certainly think he'll get an opportunity in the NBA Summer League to try to prove himself.
All right, so when you have a big three that is back in this era of change, when you know if your top three guys are the same top three guys you had last year, and they're so good and so experienced, hence the reason why Purdue is the number one or number two team in the country. Obviously, most of the pieces around them in the rotation now have changed, and I realize how early it is in the season. How is this team different than it was a year ago? Better or worse? How do you think this is a different team than the one that was pretty good last year, too?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a different dynamic. You're right. There's, the big three are back. So the offense is going to run through those guys just like it ran through them last year. And I think most people would acknowledge that the offense for us last year was not an issue for the most part.
Sure.
We had, I think, offensive efficiency-wise, I think we were 7th in the country per Ken Pom at the end of the season. So that clearly was a strength. But even that, right, there's still room for improvement, right? There's 6 spots you can move up to try to get to number one overall. And I know P.J. Thompson and Coach Painter and the rest of the offensive staff definitely is striving for that number one spot and wants to get as efficient as possible. And there's definitely some areas with some of the additions on this year's team where I think we can make those improvements. I think Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn in particular on the offensive glass last night really showed that's an area where, hey, just because we missed that first shot, it doesn't mean we're one and done like we were a lot of times last year. We have an ability to crush teams on the offensive glass, get those second chance opportunities and capitalize on those. That's an area with Oscar Clough at the center spot, such a good rebounder in his own right. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn now at the power forward spot. A lot of times him being guarded now maybe by more traditional power forwards, an area where Trey then physically isn't maybe as overmatched as he was a lot of times going against other teams' centers, allow him to get on the offensive glass even more. And then Daniel Jacobson, even though rebounding isn't maybe necessarily his calling card, when you're 7'4" and athletic like he is, you're just going to be able to get to some balls that other guys can't. And I think he can help certainly get on the offensive glass at times too. And his length at that backup center spot, we saw it last night, right? His ability to be a lob threat, put some pressure on the back line of the defense, gives Braden Smith a guy he can just throw that ball up to, and Daniel can reach some spots that a lot of guys can. And that's going to make our offense more dynamic. And Jack Benner too, he can give you a lot of what Cameron Heide gave you last year as far as that small ball forward, can step out and shoot. But, as good as Cam Heide was at times, I think his shot was inconsistent. And I think Jack Benner is kind of that more proven, legitimate long-range shooter. And, he potentially could make us even more legitimate as far as having one more knockdown shooter on the floor when he's in the game, and it can give you that different look. I think that's what's kind of nice for us offensively this year. We can go with the two big look and try and, crush you on the glass, but we can also bring Jack in and spread you out 4 shooters around, whether that's maybe Trey or Oscar Clough, a guy that can score down low. You provide that extra spacing with Jack, and we can really beat you from the outside in that sort of alignment as well. So I love what that group can be offensively for this year's team. And then Omer Meyer, right? Like, you saw what he did last night. How often last year when Braden Smith was out of the game, which honestly was not very much,
right,
because we knew how important he was to the team, and he played the lion's share of those point guard minutes. But there were times where he showed fatigue, and it would be nice to be able to give him a breather. And we saw last night, Omer Meyer, you give Braden a breather, and you don't worry as much now about when Braden's off the floor, can we generate good offense? Meyer comes in, makes 3 straight shots in a row, is able to find Kaufman, Wren, and others for some baskets, facilitating. And so the drop off at the point guard position when Braden comes off the floor and can get a breather or maybe foul trouble, things of that nature, you don't anticipate being nearly as much, because Omer Meyer is clearly a pretty legitimate playmaker in his own right.
Obviously, you know this as a player, and now you see it as an analyst. Again, last night was great. Last night was a wonderful win, and we still got a lot of season left to go. If these two teams are to see each other again, it's going to be 3 or 4 months from now, before that happens. So as a guy like Matt Painter, how do you kind of keep your team focused? How do you keep such a high level from November the 14th until you hope all the way to Easter weekend? How do you possibly do that during the entire length of a college basketball season when, frankly, the expectations are as high as they are for this group?
Right. That's definitely one of the challenges for the coaching staff, certainly. I feel like they did a great job navigating that 2 years ago when we had Zach Edey back for his senior season, coming off of the disappointment of losing in that first round the year before, all super high expectations with that whole core coming back. And they had to deal with that too, trying to make sure you didn't get ahead of yourself and try to get back to March to make amends for the loss. You had to try to go through the season, take it one day at a time, and to reach your goals. And I think they're going to be, take that same mindset this time. Whereas, yes, we want to get to March. We want to try to make a run to get to Indianapolis and win a national championship. But to get there, we got to put ourselves in the best position possible. And to do that, we have to try to get a number 1, number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. And each game along the way is going to be impactful for trying to get that seeding. And hopefully, that's where this team is able to kind of compartmentalize that and take it one game at a time and try to stack wins and stack resume builders. Last night was a massive resume building win that certainly could go a long way to trying to get a 1 seed come March. And that's going to be the challenge for this year's staff. But the fact that they've done it just as recent as 2 years ago, I think, and a lot of those guys on this year's team are on that team, I think the Purdue culture is built to handle that sort of thing.
Bahamas, after a game against Akron that takes place on Sunday night, have you kept track of different countries / how many states you have been to as part of Purdue basketball at this point in time?
Well, I don't know if I have it off the top of my head by any means, but it's definitely been a massive perk as part of my involvement with Purdue basketball over the years. Definitely don't take that for granted. It's really neat to be able to go and see all the different cool basketball venues that I've gotten to see from my time as a player to this period now as a color analyst with the radio. It's been really cool to travel to different parts of the world, different areas of the United States, and just some of the meccas of college basketball. Getting to go to the Palestra, for example, a couple years ago was a really neat experience. And yeah, I don't take that for granted. It's always kind of just a pinch yourself type of thing. Ryan Smith, who was a player when I played, he now works for the John Purdue Club and was on the trip last night as well, working for the John Purdue Club. And him and I were talking on the plane after the game, just kind of pinching ourselves a little bit like, man, how cool is it to just, get to do what we get to do and travel with the team and get to be in those sorts of environments and be a part of these kind of wins. Even though we're not technically on the team or on the staff, we still kind of feel like we are in some ways when you get involved in those trips. And yeah, it's pretty special for sure.
My rule of thumb is you're on the team playing, you can say we. It's okay. You can mention
there we
we
go. I like that.
At that point in time. Finally, before we let you go, listen, this happens on a more regular basis now because of player movement. Memphis is the first game in the championship down there in the Bahamas. You're going to play Texas Tech or Wake Forest in game number 2. If it's Wake Forest and if it's Miles Coleman on the other side, what sort of extra juice is in that game because he was on this team the last couple of years?
Well, no doubt. There's going to be extra juice if that's the case. Certainly with the guys on the floor, right? Just because you have that sort of connection with him and those guys know him. So there'll be that. I'm sure it'll be friendly for the most part, of course, but there'll definitely be that competition level that ramps up, the intensity level that ramps up because the Purdue guys won't want Miles to have one up on them, and Miles will definitely be inspired, you would think, to try to have one of his better games against the school he just departed. So that would definitely make for some interesting theater if that comes to fruition. Gold and black school versus gold and black school from a school color standpoint, and Miles going against his former squad. That would be neat if it happens. Hopefully it happens because both teams win the first game, which means we'll be facing off in the championship. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. They certainly put a pretty good foot forward the other night when they ended up losing to Michigan in overtime, but they clearly showed in that game that they can play with the best of the best in the country because we all know how talented this year's Michigan team is. So interested to see Memphis in our first matchup. They've always got athletes led by Penny Hardaway at the helm, and then Texas Tech clearly looks legit. They gave Illinois a really good battle on the road the other day, and so whether we play Wake Forest or Texas Tech in the second game, going to get a challenge either way.
Do the guys in the team call you Bobby Buckets, or have you aged out of that? Is it now Bobby or Mr. Riddell when they have a conversation with you?
Yeah, I don't want to be hearing Mr. Riddell by any means. That definitely would make me feel too old. I definitely get the Bobby Buckets still from some of the guys on the trip every now and then. So the nickname has lived on a little bit, which is fun. I've always enjoyed that. So yeah, I get Bobby Buckets, all sorts of things around that on the road. So it's always fun.
Very good. Well, I've taken up enough of your time today. Thanks for joining us today after a big win. Look forward to talking again soon. Take care, buddy.
Absolutely, Greg. Thanks for having me, and go Boilers.
You got it. Bobby Riddell, again, color analyst. Of course, he alongside of Rock Blackman do a tremendous job on the Purdue Radio Network. Again, Purdue does play at home on Sunday evening. That is against the Akron Zips. Then they go down to the Bahamas, Memphis, then Texas Tech or Wake Forest. Big Ten play starts December the 2nd. There are still non-conference games. God bless Matt Painter. Iowa State, Marquette, and Auburn still are on the schedule. And again, that Auburn game, that is the Indy Classics. We referenced the front half of that doubleheader between Butler and Northwestern at 4 o'clock on December 20th at Gamebridge. Purdue and Auburn is the game at 6:30 at Gamebridge in that now annual doubleheader. header. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number. At Greg Rakestraw on Twitter is where you can join. You can give me an old school email if you'd like to. Greg at 1070thefan.com. Again, yesterday was our day where we talked more college football. We talked Monon Bell Classic. We talked Indiana and Wisconsin. Today we have steered more basketball. We'll change that to some degree with our next couple of guests on the show. Next segment will be Kyle Neddenrip talking all things high school football regionals tonight around the area. Again, my game will be Center Grove and Warren Central. You can catch that on MyNDTV and streamed free, as all games are streamed free this round at ihsaatv.org. It's the exclusive online home once you get to the postseason of IHSAA football and, frankly, other sports as well. And then when Kevin Bowen joins us at 2 o'clock, we'll talk a variety of things. I'm sure I'll bring up the Pacers in some form. Frankly, I have been reluctant to do so the last couple of days just because the product has been so bad. It has been, it's explainable. It's understandable. It doesn't exactly make it enjoyable or palatable at this point. And like I said, because I said this yesterday, because the Pacers are not necessarily on my beat, I don't feel like I have to watch every game. I kind of keep track of scores. You know, I follow things on a regular basis. Obviously, last year in the playoffs, things were so good. I'm just like everybody else. I am locked in. I'm a fan. I'm tweeting. I'm watching, etc. Again, that doesn't have anything to do with having a job. That has just being a fan. During the course of the regular season, and I've got so many various different things going on, maybe I'm not watching every game. But last night, I'm like, all right, we're going to talk about this on the show, right? I had better discuss this at some point in time. And after watching last night's game, I'm like, no, let's try to avoid that as best we can. Almost avoiding it because I can talk about other things. Like, in other words, would you rather me talk about the Pacers being 1-11 and not being close to beating anybody on their Western road trip when you know the reason behind it? And I don't think it's getting any better anytime soon. In fact, it got worse as the trip went along. And it got worse last night because another guy got hurt in Aaron Nesmith. Sometimes, man, it is just not your year. So I can talk about that, or I can talk about the Colts that are really good at 8-2. Even on a bye, we talk about the Colts being 8-2. Or I can talk about the Indiana Hoosiers, which are suddenly the second best from a ranking standpoint team in college football. There were years you're like, man, I just hope we're the second best team in Indiana. And a lot of years that wasn't the case. Oftentimes it was fourth, and there are 4 Division I teams in the state. But now they're the second best team in the nation, and that might be one spot too low. You want to talk about that? Or we can talk about, one of the greatest small college football games that's played every year in our nation that takes place tomorrow in Crawfordsville. Or I can do what we have done for a good chunk of this show and talk about the team that might be the number 1 team in the nation in college basketball, currently rated number 2 in terms of Purdue. And I think it was Kevin that phrased it to me this way on the morning show when I made an appearance with those guys a couple of weeks ago. And it was phrased to me, hey, which of these things is more likely to happen? Is it Indiana in the Big Ten championship game? Is it the Colts in the AFC championship game? Is it Purdue in the Final Four? All taking place at Lucas Oil Stadium and all taking place in the span of 4 months. And folks, just take a moment to appreciate that it's possible that all of those things could happen. All of those things can happen. And so me be more of a glass half full than it is half empty type of person, well, frankly, I have decided, you know what? Let's talk about those good things. The bad thing, it's nobody's fault. It's Miles Turner's fault that it's a bad thing, all right? It's not just his fault. And I'm only mad at Miles for how he has handled it since then. You want to go take more money that's guaranteed, God bless you. I get that. It's not just his fault why the Pacers are so bad. plays a part of it. But I'm almost like, hey, let's just kind of put that to the side for now. Let's talk about the good things, because the good things are pretty stinking good right now if you're an Indiana/Indianapolis sports fan. We'll take this quick timeout. Cal Neddenrip of the Indianapolis Star joins us next. It's Greg Rakestraw filling in for Jake Query, halfway home on a Friday on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Bob and Todd, you guys stay right there. Again, Bob and Todd, not Bob and Tom. That's a different radio station. Bob and Todd are our callers on hold. I'll get to you ASAP. But on the Java House Peel and Poor guest line is Kyle Neddenriep of the Indianapolis Star, fellow award winner such as myself for the year of 2023 in the state of Indiana. What award that was, I've forgotten at this point in time. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Doing well, Greg. How are you? Bob and Todd.
Todd.
That's a much less popular show.
Yeah, it was kind of like Coy and Vance instead of Bo and Luke. Sometimes the combination just isn't there as much. All right, my guess on your game tonight is Decatur Central Brownsburg. Did I guess correctly?
You did. That's where I'll be at Decatur tonight if I can get in. That'll be the. I know it's a tough ticket tonight.
In defense of the folks at Decatur Central, who I hold in very high regard, there was actually a limit, I think, on the number of tickets that Brownsburg could have, but that limit was 1,250. I think the Decatur Central visiting side seats 750. So I think 1,250 is a fair number.
It is, yeah. And to be honest with you, I know that was a story going around. So I did, talk to Justin Dixon over there at Decatur, and part of this, as you know, I mean, Decatur's a 5A school, so it's not typically they're not hosting 6A games because they're not a 6A school. So, they're doing what they can to raise the capacity, which is 1,250 for the visitor side, and I think that's just kind of the way it is. I mean, they're hosting this game. You're not going to, I know some people are like, well, why don't they give up they're not going to give up a home game at this point in the tournament. That would be ridiculous. So yeah, it's going to be a great crowd. I mean, it's going to be a great environment, and there's a lot of interesting storylines, obviously, with both teams winning state last year, and I haven't seen. It's been a little while since I've seen either team, so looking forward to covering that game tonight.
My general thought has been DC will be competitive, but Brownsburg should win that game. Kind of same line of thinking from you.
Yeah, I think so. I think the biggest question, Brownsburg to me, the way they run the ball is going to be, I think, the biggest the toughest thing, I would say, as good as they are in all areas, the way they've been running the ball lately, I think that's going to be the biggest test for Decatur's defense. And, in high school football and every level of football, if you can run the ball, everything else kind of follows in line, in my experience. So, I think that'll be kind of the question. And Decatur will do some things offensively to make it tough for Brownsburg, but that's to me where the biggest question mark will be, and I think that's where Brownsburg ultimately wins the game tonight. All
right, of the upsets last week, which was the one that you thought was the biggest or caught you most off guard?
Well, I mean, just the nature of and I don't know, it was a huge upset, but the way Westfield won at the end of the game, and I know we've talked before, kind of thought Carmel might be the team to beat in the north side of the bracket, if not the whole state. The way they've been playing, I kind of Carmel Brownsburg was going to be the game we'd see down the road. So, again, you don't think of Westfield as a team that's upsetting people because of what they've done the last several years, Josh Miracle and Jake Gilbert there, but that one was definitely a score that early on caught my eye, and then the way that they won it was just incredible. So I would say that maybe was the biggest eyebrow raiser of the bunch, but the way Roncalli beat Chittard, that was also a game that I consider maybe a minor upset based on the way the season went and the fact that Chittard beat him early in the year. But again, you don't really call Roncalli and Westfield huge upset type of teams either. So, but those two games I think were definitely ones that probably caught my eye the most.
Again, you have turned into a statewide beat at this point in time, obviously primarily schools in central Indiana. I bring this up as the transition into Miles McLaughlin. What has been like the request for information, the amount of traffic when you have commented on Miles, written about him, et cetera? What has been the level of interest statewide in telling his story?
Huge. Yeah, I mean, and I'm surprised, to be honest with you. I didn't realize, I wanted to go up there probably about mid-season and do a story on him, and did that. And, the numbers were really crazy on that even that was pretty well before he'd got to Charlie Spiegel's record. So, But he was in line, and I thought, had a chance to get there. Wanted to actually just see him for myself and I went to a practice, and Russ Radke let me kind of, stand in the huddle basically and watch him do practice. And it was fun. I enjoyed kind of learning about him and Russ and his offense and the way everything works. But in the meantime, and in the time since then, the interest level, the national interest has really gotten really taken off just because of his, the fact that he's chasing Derrick Henry. He's got a chance tonight to break the single season national rushing record, which is incredible. So it'd be really cool if they made it here to the state finals and that record was on the line. That would just add another story to a busy week, but would be pretty awesome. And I think that is on the table possibly. But as you get in the tournament, obviously the opponents get tougher, and Angola and whoever wins next week's game, could be Lures or Mississinawa, will be difficult teams to do this against. So, but I've thought that throughout. I was like, man, I don't know if he's going to be able to keep doing this. He just keeps, and he does. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, from a statewide perspective, it's really even more of a national perspective. It's really kind of taken off to a level I didn't really anticipate.
Does it come down to he and Jet Goldsberry of Hamilton? I'm sorry, of Heritage Hills for the Mr. Football Award? Is it pretty much Miles at this point, or is there somebody or other somebodies I'm leaving out of this discussion?
Well, I thought going into the season that Jet Goldsberry would be the guy to beat, because if you go back in history, a lot of times it's people who win the state championship as a junior, and then they kind of have a advantage just because people know who they are. He won a state title. He's the quarterback of the team. So I kind of went into the season thinking it was sort of his to win, and then everybody else kind of is trying to chase him, but. With what Miles has done here these last, basically this whole season and really his career numbers, he's, I think, put himself in position. If he wins a national rushing record, it'd be hard to not have him be Mr. Football, I would think. So you're sort of at a point where it's like, I don't, but I know how the voting goes sometimes, and it's you'll have a lot of people voting for Jet, and you'll have some 6A people too. I think Casimir Hicks will get some votes, from Decatur Central, because he also won a state title last year. His numbers are really good. Probably not quite as good this year for a few reasons. They had some injuries, and they're playing 6A. It's a little bit tougher, and I think Jacob Davis from New Powell will get some too, and I think they'll win state. But yeah, I don't. It's going to be hard. I think those two to me are sort of the ones you're looking at right now, and then there's a lot of other really good players too, but maybe don't have the name recognition or the overall resume. But yeah, I mean, Miles is going to have a great resume. Jet is too. I mean, he's still doing it this year, and they have a chance to keep advancing as well in a higher class. So yeah, it's going to be a more interesting race maybe than I thought it was going in.
Again, Kyle Neddenriep of the Indianapolis Star joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. I'm sorry I won't see you this Friday night since I have Warren Central and Center Grove. My guess is I'll probably see you next Friday night, typically the way that these things work out. Enjoy your game, buddy.
All right, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
You got it, Kyle Neddenriep of the Indianapolis Star. All right, let's get to Bob's telephone call. We'll try to get to Todd's telephone call this segment as well. I don't want Bob to be on hold too awful long. Bob, thanks for dialing us up. What do you have for us?
Yeah, Rick, thanks for taking my call. With your expertise knowledge of high school sports, especially football, I am a long-ago graduate from Southmont. They will be playing Adrian tonight. And kind of explain to me with your expertise, Southmont has always they haven't had a home playoff game. They're always on the road. They're 11-1 and can't get a home game.
I would assume that it's just kind of the luck of the draw or the lack thereof. In other words, if I forget whether it's top or bottom half of the bracket, then it's odd-numbered sectional versus even sectional. Basically, the way the tiebreakers are set up, Bob, it is if, for example, if it goes to a tiebreaker, it means that both teams were on the road or both teams were at home last week. And then they go, all right, if that's not the case, then it's, depending on your classification, the higher number sectional or the lower number sectional. Same thing for the semi-state. There is supposed to be kind of a clause in there where, like, if you have not hosted the sectional or the regional, you get to be the semi-state host. But so much of that is simply luck of the draw because things aren't seeded. So I knew Southmont was playing an Andrean as the opponent. Give me time during the break to kind of look up Southmont's schedule and their draw, and I'll walk you through exactly why that's the case. Sound good?
Yeah, perfect. Because last week they played Lewis Cass, and Lewis Cass is 8-3. They were 10-1 going into that game, and they had to travel.
Well, again, it has nothing to do because of no seeding, anything to do with your record. Again, it's all about where you kind of slot in terms of how you were drawn onto the board. Bob, thanks for the telephone call. I appreciate it. I'll give an answer to your question, I promise you, in the next segment of the show. Let me sneak in Todd's telephone call real quick. Hello, Todd.
Hey, Greg. I know you're on time here.
You're
I'll
good.
go rapid fire. So just three things real quick here. First of all, I believe the 5A state championship game was probably played last Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to beat the Dragons, but I would like your thoughts on that. Secondly, clarity on Forrest Buckner on the IR. Is it 4 weeks or
4 games? 4 games.
Would be my question. Okay, all right. And I don't care if it's longer. We need him for the playoffs for sure. So, but it's so the bye week isn't to your advantage there necessarily.
Correct. No, he has to miss the next 3 games. The soonest he could come back is the Seattle game, December the 14th.
Roger. Okay. And then the last one, I know IU basketball team is not ranked, and I'm fine with that. In fact, I think it keeps them a little edgier.
Sure.
Not being ranked. I think sometimes you eat up the rankings a little bit too much, and all of a sudden they slip into 17 or 18, and they think they're a big deal. I like them being unranked. Same with the football team, who started the year ranked somewhere around 19th or 21st, I believe, and all they've done is do their job each week, and lo and behold, look what happened. So, just any comments you have on what I mentioned there.
Sure.
And you kind of, yeah.
You got it, Todd. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening. On the New Pal team, I think they're the favorites in 5A. Yes, I think Cathedral's their toughest opponent. New Pal got the toughest possible draw they could. They will likely play a ranked foe all 5 weeks of the tournament, assuming they make it to Lucas Oil and win through, because Plainfield, I think, was 10th. Cathedral was right behind them. East Central's really good. Then you're looking at Bloomington South or Floyd Central, who are also both ranked. Coming out of the north, again, Lafayette Jeff. I think Maryville is still going. Lafayette just got to go to Concord. They got to play tough teams all the way through. There's no easy weeks for them. I think New Pal is the best team. East Central may be the closest thing to them in terms of how they play, and they got to go to St. Leon. So tonight will not be easy for New Pal, but I expect them to win. I expect them to win the whole thing. On the Indiana front, the ranking will take care of itself. And again, given the schedule that Indiana plays, they keep playing like this, they're going to be ranked. Playing Incarnate Word will not help them in their next game. But again, they play enough quality competition, and Big Ten play starts so early these days, the ranking side of things will take care of itself. I got to answer Bob's Southmont question. I didn't think I'd get a Southmont Mounties question on the program today, but I did. And because Nathaniel and I went to the University of Indianapolis, we believe in the motto of education for service. It's what we're here to do. So I'll talk about that when we come back on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. You know, when I do these shows, especially this time of year when things are so busy, we tend to load up on great guests. It makes it easier on the guy that doesn't do this anymore on a full-time basis. So there's always these open segments of what we're going to talk about. I did not plan on talking about the postseason path of the Southmont Mounties, but here we are because Bob asked, and I promised to deliver. So he asked about his Mounties, who are 11-1 and are now who are on the road for a third consecutive week in the state tournament. So here's how this happens. The Mounties are in 2A Sectional 34. They were drawn at home the first week. They beat the Delphi Oracles. The next game that Southmont played was against Nathaniel Finch's Western Boone Stars. Western Boone was also at home in round number 1. So since both teams had the same number of home games, the team that was, quote, the bottom team on the bracket or the lower team in the bracket, they were the second named team compared to Southmont, they got the home game. Now, Southmont was undeterred by having to go play at Western Boone High School. On Halloween, the carriage turned back into a pumpkin for the Stars. Southmont beat Webo 33-11. So they ended up playing Lewis Cass in the sectional championship game. Lewis Cass was on the road in week number 1. They were then at home in week number 2, which meant that both teams had the same number of home games in the tournament. Again, Lewis Cass was the last named team on the bracket, hence they had the tiebreaker, and so Southmont is on the road. The Mounties took their offense with them to Galveston, Walton, all the burgs that make up Lewis Cass High School. Didn't take their defense, but they took enough offense. They beat the Kings by a score of 44-39. So now Southmont will face Andrean in the regional championship game. And to determine the tiebreak procedures in a regional, the idea is that if a team did not host their sectional final, well, they get to host the regional. But apparently the Fighting 59ers also were on the road to win their sectional championship game. In fact, I can confirm that Andrean had not had a home game yet in the tournament because they played at Wheeler and at Rensselaer Central, and the Fighting 59ers won them both. So since both teams were on the road for their sectional championship, what is the tiebreaker? The odd sectional number gets to host. Well, let's go back to the sectional draw. Sectional 33 is where Andrean is from. Southmont, sectional 34. And that is how the Southmont Mounties were on the road 3 consecutive weeks. Bob, I hope that makes sense. IHSAA.org has all of that explanation for you. Good luck to your Mounties. And again, I haven't done the computer math just yet, but my guess would be, I could look at Carol's site, he would tell me immediately, because he does that stuff, which is why he's beloved by all of us that work in this business. If Southmont gets past Andrean, I would imagine they would be at home. In fact, I think I remember seeing that they would be at home next week. Good luck to your Mounties as you make your way. And by the way, I have this address committed to memory. 5959 Broadway in Merrillville, if you're going to tonight's game to watch Southmont take on said Fighting 59ers. With that, that's how you fill a segment with no guest. We'll take a quick time out. Kevin Bowen will join us next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. less sleep. So hopefully Kevin Bowen can refrain from swearing after hearing that song as his lead-in here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. What are you doing back at work this week, by the way?
Well, we don't get paternity leave, so it's just all kind of PTO, and I certainly took some other PTO earlier in the year. So I figured, last Friday she was born, so obviously it didn't work that day, and 3 days this week, and if you're only working 2 days, Rick, for you that is absolutely nothing. So I felt like it's the least I could do, and you and I both typically are out there at the Colts after the show, so the fact that I didn't have to go out there either day, Thursday or Friday, was very nice. So worked out well for me.
You're Kevin freaking Bowen. You write for the website and you're on Morning Drive. You think they're going to ding you for taking too many days off? The Urban One offices will drop the hammer on one of Indianapolis's most popular sports personalities with luxurious hair, courtesy of your radio deal?
Thank you. Thank you to We Grow Hair Indy for that. As you know, I believe you have said November and May maybe are your busiest
Correct.
months.
Yes.
I can't speak to maybe one day for me, but you know how it is. I mean, it's just different this time of year. So June and July, I probably would have stretched it a little bit further, but very supportive wife. And to your point, when you have a third and the oldest two are both in school Monday through Friday, it's a little bit easier in terms of the daily grind. At nighttime, though, boy, I didn't think I'd be driving a baby around Butler's camp at 2:45 in the morning, but there I was the other night trying to get her back to sleep. So start the engine, head over to Hinkle, and see if there's any cars left in the parking lot after they beat Chicago State.
The way that Team Rakestraw handled this was that I took the late shift. In other words, like I would stay up until like 2 or 3, and I'd basically kick Amy to the bedroom and say, hey, next 6 hours, don't come out here, okay? You've stored up enough. We can take care of the feeding stuff. I got this. This is your guaranteed sleep time. Then middle of the night, I'll get 4 or 5 hours of sleep before I actually have to, go to my job. Is that the same thing that Team Bowen is handling, or do times vary in the Bowen household?
Yeah, we're kind of on the same plan there. This is the first baby, really fall baby for me, or like basketball season baby, which is nice. Like last night, for example, I said, hey, I'll take Nelly during the Pacer game throughout. And, that was 11 o'clock, I think is when, luckily, FanDuel crapped out on all of us, I think, there for a few minutes so I could go to bed. And then she kind of passed her back off to me like at 5. So for the most part, she unfortunately is the one feeding Nelly every couple hours. So, I could handle, she can go to bed at 8:15 after that feed, and then I could kind of handle it until about 11 o'clock and wake her back up for the feed. And then morning time, just start my morning routine a little bit earlier and bring Nelly downstairs with me. So, again, some of these late night basketball games, usually I dread the, IU at the barn at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. I'm like, oh man, you got to watch it. Of course, you got to talk about it the next morning, but when you're in a baby season, you don't mind it as much because you can kind of, two birds with one stone, if you will.
I also know how talk show hosts work. When you do this daily, and then you're gone for 4 or 5 days, you're trying to remember all the things you thought about that would be good to say on the radio when you didn't have the chance to say those things on the radio. So when you're not here Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what were the things you were dying to say or talk about when you got back on the air on Thursday morning?
I know. I kind of felt like the kids late to the party. I was like, hey,
wait a minute.
Am I allowed to talk about?
I got this take. Hang on a second. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Right. Can I talk about Omar Cooper Jr.? Can I talk about Jonathan Taylor? Can I go back to Jeremiah Love's run? All of that on Monday. I guess Colts-wise, a super entertaining game. I think the urgency of that game shouldn't be lost. If you were all of a sudden, to lose that game going into your bye week and then you're at Kansas City out of the bye, you watched New England win last night, they would be a full game up in the standings on you in the 1 seed. Jacksonville would be a little bit closer. I just think it's one of those games that, maybe there will obviously be bigger games in terms of opponent record the rest of the way, but I just thought it was a huge win. And in a game where you obviously had several moments where it looked like you weren't going to win that game. Taylor's heroics, just what more can you say about him? I mean, it's the closest thing to an MVP type of level you're going to get from a running back. The Daniel Jones situation obviously is a little bit more on okay, where are we at with him exiting the bye week? And then, I would say just the DeForest Buckner injury was probably the other thing Colts related of, he is such a key ingredient. I shared this earlier today on the show, but I was speaking with a coach the Colts faced a few weeks back, and I was like, hey, just general thoughts. What do you think about the Colts? And the first thing he said to me was 99 makes it all go. And I just think it's kind of the praise that I think we know, but just to hear that from around the league of what he means to the defense, it's obviously going to be a big loss for however long he's out.
How does the defense, now that Sauce Gardner is here, and again, you're trying to compensate for not having DeForest Buckner at least until mid-December, how the Colts play defense looks differently against the Chiefs versus what it was against the Falcons, because you basically had 48 hours in a flight to teach Sauce a new playbook. Now that you've got the gift of time for 2 weeks, what can Lou Anarumo and group do differently?
Well, I throw in, Rake, where is Travarius Ward's status as well?
Of course.
I think if he can get back in the lineup after the bye, which he is eligible to return from IR, now you just sleep better at night versus how you've treated the other cornerback position. One thing I didn't really understand in that Atlanta game is they played Mekhi Blackman a lot more than Jalen Jones. I thought Jones did a nice job in the Pittsburgh game. I would have liked to have seen more from him. Blackman had a couple moments there that you didn't love. So, I think a healthy Ward and then Gardner, now you can give, I think, ample attention to your pass rush. And, for the most part, Anarumo's pretty willing to do that anyways. Maybe there's some moments he's a little hesitant, but, Cam Bynum blitzing from a deep free safety spot is not something every team in the league would be comfortable with. Not a lot of teams would be comfortable with it given the Colts cornerback situation. But early in the game, the Colts are dialing that up, and it turned out to be a huge play in the game. Zaire Franklin's blitz there in overtime as well. So I just think more of that. A, you need it, I think, without Buckner. And again, B, you should feel a little bit more comfortable with it. And if you look at the wideouts the rest of the way, you're going to face some very good wideouts here down the stretch. So I think it comes at the right time as well.
And maybe concern isn't the right word, but I'll say it anyway. Level of concern, what we've seen from Daniel Jones the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest question I've kind of gone back and forth with all week long, right? Because through the first 7 or 8 games, he was defying the back of his own baseball card, and now he's kind of gotten back to the New York side of the baseball card. So, where are we here? Are we is the Indy sample, because the Indy sample size is bigger than the last 2 weeks, of course. Are we back to New York, or will those first 2 months be the prevailing theme here when they get back from the bye week? Has the rest of the NFL kind of caught up to a little bit of it? These are all questions I have. And again, the offensive line situation, they continue to be really healthy, which, at some point the shoe typically drops with that position group, and you deal with some sort of banged up nature at this point. Last year you had Will Fries already broke his leg. Ryan Kelly had been dealing with some stuff, and then you had, unfortunately, Braden Smith, going away from the team for the final month and a half of the season. So, all of that, I think, are questions that you have there with Jones. The one thing he was doing so well the first 2 months of the season, which again was kind of anti what he did in New York, was when pressure was in his face, he was feasting. And now, the old adage, and I know I've said this a lot, but I think it's such a great quote from Peyton Manning about quarterback play is, when you identify a bad play, make sure it's not an even worse play. And right now with Daniel Jones, some of those bad plays have been, borderline catastrophic. Now, having said that, going back to that Atlanta game, the scramble on 3rd and 21, the throws to Tyler Warren on 4th and 2, and then the one in overtime, those are big-time players in a big-time moment. So I don't think you can lose sight of that either.
How much NFL football are you consuming on Sunday, and what games are really on your radar come Sunday?
Well, my fandom for Notre Dame basketball. We've got a big one here at noon. Notre Dame at Ohio State here coming up on Sunday. Shout out to Coach Owens, Coach Shrewsbury and company. It's been a very nice start to the season, so very, very much looking forward to that. I'm not used to experiencing the 1 o'clock NFL window, but I was on Sunday. Oh my gosh, it can get electric there, going back and forth, toggling through those finishes in the 1 o'clock window. And Rake, this is a great slate for Colts bye week. You've got some really good games. I think Buccaneers Bills is a really good game. Eagles Lions, I know, is one that a lot of people talked about. I believe that's Sunday Night Football. You get a look at your opponent next week with Chiefs at Broncos. It's a huge game for Kansas City in that one. And then Seahawks Rams is another 4 o'clocker. That's a really good game. So, yeah, last night was a dud, of course, and Monday night really intrigue me. I want to say it's Cowboys Raiders, but outside of that, you've got some really, really good games. 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then Sunday Night Football as well.
All right, since you brought it up, and since mom and baby are doing well, January 27th, UVA and South Bend back in play for you at this point?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. What day of the week are we looking at?
Tuesday night against University of Virginia.
Let's throw that in pencil on the schedule, and I will clear that with the powers that be. But I like the sound of that.
All right, take an extra shift or two. You should be fine. From a Saturday viewing standpoint, Hoosiers at noon. Frankly, you can watch them both. Hoosiers at noon, Pacers at 7. What are you looking forward to kind of checking on the dial come Saturday?
Yeah, and, obviously I'll throw in my Irish and college game day there at noon. The thing about IU, it's just wild how I think you could make the argument, and I don't know, maybe Vanderbilt would fall into the boat a little bit, but certainly from a Big Ten standpoint, Rake, I don't know if there's two programs that have gone at a bigger 180 in the last 3 years than Wisconsin and IU. I mean, I remember being at Indiana, and they scored 83 points in football on the Hoosiers. And if you told me Saturday that 83 obviously is a ridiculous number, but if you told me Indiana scored 63, I don't think I'd laugh at that today, given how Wisconsin is. Wisconsin won a football game last week, and their leading passer was their punter.
Yep.
It's just it's amazing, and they've dealt a lot of injuries and everything. So the fact that I'm looking at Indiana as a 30-point favorite is just wild. So. Yeah, it's a get healthy game. It's get to the weird late season bye, and then the biggest tickets we'll probably see in the state of Indiana history for that Big Ten title game for Indiana and Ohio State.
Do you know that Indiana is currently on a winning streak against the University of Wisconsin?
Really? You know what? Now you say that. Didn't Tom Allen win up there during
Correct.
the COVID season?
The COVID year, they won a very low-scoring game, 14-6. That was one of the many big wins that year. Penn State to start the season, Michigan during the course of the COVID season as well. And through the quirks of the Big Ten calendar now, and it's there was the divisional opponents, and now you've got the four teams out west. Indiana and Wisconsin have not played since 2023, and Indiana beat Wisconsin 20-14 when they played in 2023. Indiana's on a 2-game winning streak against the Badgers.
It's kind of the old adage, and I know, we probably need a little bit more evidence than just a couple of years, Rake. But, for several years there was a lot of complaining from teams that were in the East Division of the Big Ten versus the West Division of the Big Ten. And, again, you probably need a little bit more of a sample size, but some of that's starting to play out of those teams that feasted out in the West. It's a different animal now that you've grouped everybody together. And, Indiana just got the short end of the stick, frankly, with how that line was drawn, and not to say that all of a sudden they would have represented the West in the Big Ten title game like Purdue did a couple years back, but still a little bit more of a level playing field. You can't get all the way there with so many teams in the Big Ten, but certainly the East versus West was quite the difference in how those teams are stacked.
Yeah, by the way, there was a 4-year stretch where it was 83-20, 59-7, 62-14, and 51-3. So yeah, I remember those days, and the 83 and the 62 are the ones that truly kind of jump off the page at me, and I'll tell the story about the 62-14 game coming up here in just a matter of moments. Do we need to talk Pacers at this point, or can we just kind of push them to the side?
Well, I'll toss in one more on the 83. You're a box score nerd like me. If I'm not mistaken, Rake, I think at one point it was like 7-7.
Right. Sounds about right.
And
yeah.
I want to say the scoring didn't really get truly going until early second quarter for Wisconsin, which is just kind of crazy to look at. Yeah, Pacers, I mean, when Neesmith went down last night, I had an audible gasp, and it wasn't because I was looking at Nellie's diaper. It was just quite the scene, and we'll see what severity is on it. Kind of like Rick Carlisle avoided the very serious nature. I don't know if that's the 3-letter acronym they avoided, and, he still can miss substantial time. But, having said that, and I know, Vegas lines aren't everything by any means, but if you look at, what the expectation was going into each of these 4 Western Conference games, and again, 3 of the 4 teams were on back-to-backs of who you just played out West. I mean, you got ran out of the gym. Last night, the Pacers were a 4-point underdog, and they lost by 30. And Utah, they were favored and lost significantly. So, again, I know that's not gospel, but, to me, you look at the first 6 or 7 games, like Giannis had to hit a heroic shot to beat you. The Thunder, it was double OT. I know the Brooklyn game got it from you, but they had some chances. A wide open three. I'm trying to think who it was. Minnesota maybe. That Neesmith missed. You were very competitive in some of these earlier games. So just a disappointing trip on obviously the health level with Neesmith, and then certainly the product on the floor. So yeah, it is a big time wake up call. We'll see when Benedict Mathurin returns and what's up with Neesmith, and if they can somehow get a win tomorrow night against the Raptors.
All right, I'll get back to football for a final thing before we let you go actually be a dad and enjoy a little downtime here on the Colts bye week. Where would you wager, a guess, and I use the word wager on purpose, Jonathan Taylor on the NFL odds for being the NFL MVP currently slots in where?
Well, he's not. There's no way he's very high, or at least he should be higher, I guess is probably the best way to put it. I don't know. I'll say he's fourth.
He's third, the latest projection I saw that came up yesterday. Can you name the 2 players that would be in front of him?
Well, I guess the guy we saw last night in Drake May, and I would assume Matthew Stafford.
Boom, boom. See, the lack of sleep is not affecting you at all, brother. You are on top of your game, yes. Plus 300 for Stafford and May, plus 500 for Jonathan Taylor. And right now, Patrick Mahomes, plus 600, Josh Allen, plus 700. That's the most up-to-date list I could find through Google search, and I'm sure the internet would not lie to me. So there you go.
That's a little bit better odds than I thought, to be honest with you. I mean, that's not, that crazy. I mean, $10 to win 50, it's, I don't know. He's a little bit more in that quarterback mix, but Stafford's numbers, I didn't realize this. It's like 20 touchdowns and 0 picks the last 4 or 5 games. And so, yeah, we'll see. I think he's going to need, a game to get flexed, something like that, go off against Kansas City when a lot of eyes are watching you, a few more of those, Mendoza-type moments, or frankly, the run he had in Berlin, a few more of those, kind of in the standalone windows, I think, to draw a lot of the attention.
Again, that is Kevin Bowen, who is working when he probably shouldn't be. Go enjoy a little bit more downtime. I'll see you at some point in time next week.
Rake, have a great call tomorrow. I'll be watching.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And, of course, the call he's referring to is the Monon Bell Classic from Little Giant Stadium in Crawfordsville. Wabash and DePaul for a 131st time. Winner likely gets a Division III at-large berth. Loser has to hear it from the other side for 364 days. That's the way that rivalry works. And I get to be fortunate to have the call for a 5th consecutive year via the ISC Sports Network, iscsportsnetwork.com, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I have no idea how Twitch works, but we're on there. Apple TV, Roku, etc., the various ways that you can join. Yes, I went to a couple of different sites, and the one that had the best kind of compilation of betting sites was a website called Vegas Insider, but it pulled it up from like last Friday, and they showed like 4 different listings, and JT was basically 3rd or 4th in all of those groupings. At the time, May was slightly ahead of Stafford. The fact that he had the stage to himself and won last night, not exactly a surprise. By the way, if you're wondering about the stat compilation for everybody involved, Drake May leads the league in passing. Now, he has played the most games, but still, 28-36 yards passing. You know who's second in the NFL in passing yards right now? Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts, 26-59. Now, DJ's interceptions have kind of ticked up a little bit the last couple of weeks. He's at 7, 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a bit fewer touchdowns because, well, Jonathan Taylor has been the touchdown vulture for everybody. We established this yesterday, that Jonathan Taylor has actually scored more than 4 other NFL teams so far this season. In terms of Matthew Stafford, 4th in passing yardage currently, 24-27. But the jaw-dropping stat, other than where the Rams are in the standings, which would be 7-2, because they have had the bye, the Indianapolis Colts obviously are getting theirs. But 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions so far for Matthew Stafford. So if you are, again, and frankly, because he's not playing this weekend, JT won't be talked about. But if you're wondering the company he is keeping in terms of the MVP race, it is Drake May, it is Matthew Stafford, And then it's kind of waiting on the Chiefs and Bills to kick it into high gear. Because the Bills last week somehow, some way lost the Miami Dolphins. There's always at least one NFL game every Sunday. You just go, how the blank did that just happen? And that was that game last week. Well, the Bills play the Buccaneers. And again, Kevin was right. In one sense, it's a shame the Colts aren't part of this slate. In another sense, hey, good for us. We all get to watch. Bills, Buccaneers this week. Chargers, Jaguars this week. Seahawks, Rams this week. Chiefs, Broncos this week. Lions, Eagles this week. You know what's not good? The Monday Night Football game. Like your grandpa thinks this is going to be a great game. Because when Don Meredith was calling this game, it was a great game. But the Cowboys and Raiders are the Monday Night Football game. The Has-Been Bowl is the Monday night game coming up later this weekend. Now, I had promised you a little more conversation about Wisconsin and Indiana, and I'll tell it to you here. So, again, Indiana, barring something of calamity, they're playing in the state of Indiana the next two games. They have a bye week in between. They have 2 games left to go. The combined number of Big Ten wins between the two teams they are playing is 1. And Wisconsin got it last week. And as Kevin just said, their leading passer was their punter in their win last week. Indiana will be in the Big Ten championship game for the first time. There was a scenario last year that could have played out. It didn't because they lost at Ohio State. Before that, the last time they could have been in the Big Ten championship game was the COVID year, and I'm not sure any of that actually happened. The time before that, when we actually had 12 teams in the conference and it was 6 teams in a division, in 2012, Indiana's division included Penn State and Ohio State, who were both on probation and could not play in the game. But at the time, it wasn't fully East and West. Like they tried to mix and match the teams for competitive balance. And Wisconsin was in the same division as was the Indiana Hoosiers. And there was a scenario at play when the Badgers came to Bloomington, November the 10th of 2012, that if Indiana had won that game and had won out, I think that would have put them at 7-5. I think that would have given them 4 or 5 Big Ten wins, and they would have won their division of the Big Ten and played in the conference championship game. So nobody thought that Indiana team was really all that good, but hey, through luck of the draw, you just might back your way into a Big Ten championship game. And on that day, Wisconsin came to Bloomington and scored 62 points, while the Hoosiers scored 14. Again, before the COVID season, it was 18 years since Indiana had beaten Wisconsin. And that was a stunning home game, first year of Jerry DiNardo win against Wisconsin. The year before that, it was Levron Williams, Antoine Randall L. running all over Camp Randall as Indiana won 63-32. Other than that, you got to go back to 1992, the last time that Indiana beat the Badgers. And again, back in those days, Indiana winning against Wisconsin was kind of sort of a regular thing. Everybody winning against Wisconsin back in those days was kind of sort of a regular thing. Again, history favors Wisconsin in this matchup. Current roster resume obviously features Indiana in this matchup. It is crazy to think that Wisconsin comes here for Indiana and it's Wisconsin that is the speed bump and not the other way around. Hoosiers, of course, tomorrow in action at noon, and you catch all the action right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I get to have a segment off. It's a feel-good Friday. I feel good that Jake Query taped this segment. A great story, by the way, before he left for Austria. You'll hear from Jake Query when we come back on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
for filling in and for Eddie as well. But folks, want to again remind you before I get to an awesome story from the south side of Indianapolis about Franciscan Health, the number one heart program in Indiana for cardiology by health grades, number one in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by care checks, and Franciscan Health always offering that affordable heart scan for just $49. You can self-refer, you can pay out of pocket, you get a free heart health risk assessment with every scan that's included with the screening. You can't afford to not get it, especially if you are over the age of 40 and you have one of the following risk factors for heart disease: high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, obesity if you're a current or former smoker, or if you have a family heart history that is not the best, that would be the case for me, then you would qualify for the heart scan at Franciscan Health, but I recommend it for about everybody. As a matter of fact, just got a text earlier this week from a listener that sent me a message that said, Jake, wanted to let you know that I got my heart scan done, which is, I'm always happy to hear about that. And in this particular case, the heart scan was such that needed to then go on to a statin, and that's the thing. Anytime that we are taking the ability to take somebody and then find out that they're going in for that heart scan that's routine because they heard about it here, and then find out that, yes, they are able to get the first steps towards cardiovascular health and a healthier living, then that's what I love. $49 heart scan at franciscanhealth.org/screening bundles, or you can always call 833-238-0688. I'll give that number again here in just a second. But our feel-good story, let's go back to what took place at the end of last week, over the weekend, as a matter of fact. And think about your senior year in high school. What a special time it is. You're with your friends, and, you know, there's always kind of that apprehension, right? That uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen beyond high school, what's going to happen to your friendships, the bonds that you have, and you want to make sure that you are taking the most of every opportunity, taking advantage of each thing that comes along the way. So imagine what it must be like, even though you have won a state title before, to be an athlete as a senior in high school and be so excited about your senior year. Because even if you won a title as a junior, a sophomore, freshman, your senior year, like, that's your year, that's your class, right? And with Roncalli volleyball, you know, Christina Erasmus, their head coach, knew that she had a special team before her. And she knew that her senior setter, Addie Haberthy, was a special player that was going to be one of those seniors, and Addie obviously wanted to make sure that she was putting her stamp on the program on her way out as a senior. So imagine for Addie and Addie Haberthy the disappointment, the heartbreak that had to have taken place just before the start of her senior year, back actually late summer for that matter, when she tears her ACL. And yes, Addie has a volleyball scholarship to Xavier. She knew that the sport was going to be something she could continue beyond the time that she was at Roncalli. But again, back to that bond and knowing that you are with your teammates from high school, it is so special. So they go into the state finals, does Roncalli, and Christina says, you know what? If we get into the situation where we have a match point, then perhaps Addie can be the one to come out and get the serve that wins us in her senior year the volleyball state championship. The rest of the teammates, of course, have to do their part to get them to that point. They have to believe in Addie's ability to deliver that serve. And in addition to that, you have, of course, Bishop Dwenger, a formidable opponent right on the other side that is doing what they can to make sure that it doesn't come down to the point where it is that easy or that certain that there would be 1 point with things right there. And Dwenger, give them credit. They rallied in that third set, down 2-0 before Roncalli was then able to get enough of a cushion that when it would come down to the match point, that Addie would go in to serve. Now, the other thing that Christina had to think about was the fact that you have to practice at least 10 practices over the course of the season to be eligible to play in the state final. And Addie was able to do that. She practiced the 10 practices with the torn ACL, put herself in position, and then once she got the serve over, and you can imagine the nerves that went with that, then the rest of the team had to deliver. And they did exactly that. Lily Jones got the kill that won Roncalli the state title, and it was Addie that was able to get that game, that match, that championship-winning serve. It is the kind of story that is about resilience, about teamwork, about camaraderie, and about belief. And that's what I love about our Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart story, because sometimes it's about thinking above and beyond what's in the now, but rather seeing in your future and putting yourself in position to be at the best when it matters most. That's what I love about the Franciscan Health $49 heart scan. That's also what I love about the fact that coming up December the 7th, don't forget our Franciscan Health Movember celebration, celebrating men's health for the month of November. We're going to do it at the end of the first week of December on a Sunday at Gugman House Brewing over near Speedway. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm going to be there. JMV will be there. Jeff Rickard, Sean Copeland, and Nick Jordan from our sister station B105, as well as Hammer and Nigel from WIBC. We did this a year ago, and it was awesome. Sitting around with football on from 12 until 2, having a cold beverage, and also having there from Franciscan screening and medical experts that can talk to you, answer questions, do screenings for you. We'll have games that we can play. We'll have prizes that can be given out. But most importantly, the ultimate prize is about your health. I'm talking about blood pressure, glucose, cholesterol screening, strength and balance assessments. Ask a nurse there for anything from prostate cancer risk assessment to your cardiovascular health that we always talk about, health and nutrition, exercise experts, you name it. When it comes to men's health, November is when it becomes conscientious. December is when we celebrate the path to a healthier you, and we're going to do that December 7th at Gugman House Brewing. I look forward to it. I also look forward each and every Friday at the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour, celebrating different athletes, overcoming the odds, or simply fulfilling a dream like we saw at Roncalli. Congratulations to Addie. Congratulations to the Royals. You folks have a wonderful weekend. And thanks again to Greg Rakestraw for filling in. I'll be back with you next week on Query and Company here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
All right, let's get the shameless, I'm pretty shameful about it, the shameless self-promotion out of the way. Places you can hear me the rest of the weekend. Okay, here we go. Warren Central Center Grove tonight at CG. I don't get to Center Grove as much as I used to. It's still, for me, the best atmosphere locally in terms of high school football because the way they've kind of horseshoed that place off and being up on the hilltop and just they're always good. It's always loud, and it's more. You kind of set your watch. I'm going to see these teams usually about this time of year between Warren and Center Grove. I've done this regional game just a few times over the years between these two. MyNDTV and IHSAATV.org is where you can find me. I'm sure on the way home you will hear me on with Bob Lovell right here on this same radio station tonight as he has regional scores from across the state of Indiana. We're down to just 24 games being played tonight. I will go over all of the local matchups coming up in a matter of moments. Tomorrow, one of my favorite days of the year, the 131st Monon Bell Classic on the ISC Sports Network. 8-1 Wabash playing host to 8-1 DePaul. Winner gets to go likely to the Division III playoffs, but frankly, that is secondary. Winner gets to have the bell. If Wabash wins it, it's back on their campus for the first time in 4 years. If DePaul wins it, it continues what has been their longest winning streak in the series for 25 years and sends them to the postseason, likely, for a 5th consecutive year. Myself, Kelsey Casper, Brad Walker-Merca, Steve Hoffman have all of the coverage tomorrow. ISCSportsNetwork.com, ISC Sports Network's social media outlets. I tell people the easiest way to watch the game, go to ISC Sports Network on YouTube, and you will see the Monon Bell Classic because thousands of people literally will be watching along with you when you check out said game. I'm sure I'll make an appearance on Bob's show tomorrow night. Sunday is one of the rare days that I know I will not be doing any media whatsoever. So if you know me, and to quote the great Dale Davis, I guess to paraphrase actually, he would say, I know where you live. It's a great Pacers commercial back in the day. So I'll phrase it this way. If you know where I live, stop by, we'll have a beer. I'm just going to be raking leaves all day. I know the forecast for tomorrow is beautiful. I haven't looked to see what Sunday's forecast has looked like. Nothing more exciting in talk radio than the host filibustering until he can load up exactly the forecast that he is looking for. So as I am feverishly typing on weather.com, so I know what the forecast is going to be like on Sunday to see if I am raking as many leaves as I think I am. The answer is yes. Now, apparently, it's going to be back to, what November's supposed to be like. 52 degrees on Sunday. I'll break less of a sweat that way. I'll live with that. Still enough of a sweat, though, that a cold beer sounds heavenly. If you want to swing by and talk to me on Sunday, great. And if not, that's fine, too. I just know I'm not talking into a microphone for once on Sunday. Love my job. Looking forward to a day off. I overlooked Soccer Saturday, which is on these airwaves tomorrow morning from 9 a.m. until 10. A variety of topics that we'll discuss on the program tomorrow. So tune in and find out exactly what we are going to be talking about. We're going to get to JMV and the crosstalk segment of the program brought to us by our friends at Love Heating and Cooling coming up in a matter of moments. 317-353-2141 for the good folks at Love HVAC. However, I have noticed this trend being documented on social media today. So allow me to share with you my experience, and we'll welcome in John at that point in time. Today is the 39th anniversary of the release of the movie Hoosiers. November 14th, 1986 is when the movie debuted in theaters. My story with Hoosiers has gone on now for 40 years, like I'm sure many of you feel the same, but maybe I can add a little bit of a level to it. First of all, I found out about the movie. There was a flyer on my dad's car or truck. I forget what he was driving back in the fall of 86. My guess would be a pickup truck, probably a Ford Ranger. Maybe is it one of the old Ford F-150s is what he had back in the day. But we went to go watch. How's this for a specific memory? Corden opened up a new gym in 86. It was christened by the University of Louisville having a practice in that gym, and the place was packed because U of L were the defending NCAA champions at the time. And I grew up, it's not the case now, but I grew up as a massive University of Louisville fan. Not IU, not UK, because you had one of three options back then. Sorry, Purdue wasn't an option unless you went to school there in that part of the state. U of L was my team, all right? So going to see them was awesome. And then as we leave, there's a piece of paper on Dad's truck. Hey, the movie Hoosiers debuts next week at the Corden Twin Cinemas. We had one movie house and it had two screens in Harrison County. And I remember going to see that movie for the first time and being absolutely mesmerized. And again, because I grew up in the single-class era, you watched that was your dream. Unfortunately, didn't work out that way for Lanesville. We were mostly good when I was in high school, but never could slay the Giants of New Albany or Floyd Central to get past the sectional round. And now I fast forward, and I am so ridiculous. This is a humble brag or not so humble brag, but please know that I acknowledge how lucky I am to do what I have done for as long as I have in a place as special as this. But here are now my ties to the movie Hoosiers. First of all, I know Angelo Pizzo and David Anspaugh, and John, who is standing by, does the exact same thing. I've had lunch with Angelo Pizzo. That's pretty freaking cool. Brad Long, buddy from the movie, is a friend of mine. He and I serve on a board together. We're on the Milan 54 board together, the Milan Museum that honors the movie Hoosiers. I remember literally being 2 floors above where I am sitting right now when the fan offices were on the 6th floor and my office was down the hall. And getting a phone call from the wonderful people at the Hoosier Gym. This would have been the fall of 2016. Hey, we're having a 30th anniversary Hoosiers special. We would like you to be the MC for the event. And I have to go, I am so sorry. I'm already booked that night. I said, believe me, at the end of this phone call, I would have been 10 years old, correct? Yes. I would have been 10 years old when the movie came out. I said, 10-year-old me is going to kick my ass as soon as this phone call comes to an end. Had to say no. But you know what I get to do now? I get to broadcast an event every year at the Hoosier Gym, the Hoosier Reunion All-Star Classic. So I can tell you this, kind of being in on the know of some of these things, there are multiple events already being planned for the 40th anniversary of the release of the movie next year. The one that the Milan Museum is doing will be at the Milan Gymnasium in November. I think the one that the Hoosier Gym is doing is going to be in September. So it's good that everybody is kind of marking this anniversary on social media today. 39 years ago today, Hoosiers was released. I can tell you we are now in round number territory, and there will be all kind of events featuring a lot of folks in the movie, and my guess would be a lot of surviving members of the Milan Indians of 1954. And I was so lucky that 2 years ago, I got to play a part in the 70th anniversary of the Milan 54 story. And I'm very much looking forward to playing a part in the 40th anniversary of Hoosiers, especially the event that takes place in Milan. So, for what it's worth, put November 7th on your calendar for next year. Just saying, you might want to spend some time in Milan on November the 7th. With that as the backdrop, I have made John wait long enough. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Greg Rakestraw. That is quite a number right there, too. Yeah, David Anspaugh, I talked with him in the summer. He was calling me after the Pacer run, too. He's a unique content haver from motion pictures and television and direction. He was great.
How was the upstairs pub yesterday?
Oh, man, it was. It's hard to live up to the expectations I had for it, but man, it surpassed it. I actually stayed there probably till about 8:00, and had a lot of my friends I went to high school with. I had really, Greg, 50-year friendship, relationship people that were inside the upstairs with me yesterday, and it was just so good. And I have such a deeply rooted love for those people in that particular area. And not so much because I attended IU. I'm not an IU grad. I went to Indiana State, but I am from that area, and that's where I hung out growing up, even though I went to Indiana State, and it was incredibly special for me. I had a great time, and shout out to Brent Halverson, Greg, and Eric, and Jake, and Mike, and Matt, and then Steve Angle, the owner, for having it yesterday. It was absolutely awesome, and I can't wait to run that back.
Did I see that you had both Fish and Buck on the show simultaneously? Is that a factual statement?
Yeah, it's funny. Don came in, and I've tried to get Buck Soar, and he will never go on a radio show, ever. And I've tried to get him, and I've met him before because his granddaughter, Eric's daughter, and my daughter have played hoop together before. And he's always said no. He's always been nice about it. And then all of a sudden, after Don got off the air yesterday, I saw him poke his head through the door, and I go, come on, man. Come on, you guys. He literally was on for like a minute and a half. He is a genuinely awesome dude. I mean, both he and Eric are awesome. And Eric won't do it either, but he is an awesome dude. And it was a feeling of gratification that I finally got his ass on this show for the first time yesterday. And that was that. So it was cool.
You got back 9 today. Who you got lined up on the show this afternoon?
I think we're going to go a little Purdue from last night. I'm sure you talked about that. What an outstanding win that was from Matt Painter and his crew. Trey Kaufman-Wren back, and Braden Smith was Braden Smith. Yeah, we'll go over that. We've got Joel A. Erickson. We'll talk Colts bye week. I know Mike Wells from ESPN Radio sent a lot of his students from IU over to us yesterday as well. We'll talk to Mike, and we'll see. I got some people around here that are going to join us as well. We'll see what's all happening on this Friday night during a Colts bye week. And, hey, I know you're going to CG later on tonight. Say hello to everybody down there for me. Hey, Greg, tell them, say, hey, JMV have asked me, can you guys leave a broom out there for the West Gym on a Tuesday night so he can, like, run a broom over the floor and doesn't ruin his shoes and slide around like a madman when I'm hooping on Tuesday night? I love the West Gym, but the floor is a catastrophe. Just maybe make a note of that, slide that to the CG, and maybe they'll leave me a broom or a wet or a dry mop or something out there. Would you do that for me?
I will contact them and Martha the Mop Lady both. They'll be happy to stop by and see you at the West Gym. Be good, buddy. Enjoy the show.
You got it. Thanks, Greg. We'll be listening tonight, man.
I will stop talking so that guy can start talking. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get back to the high school football slate. But trust me, I've got you covered on MyNDTV and IHSATV.org. By the way, from Jeremiah on Twitter, yes, I have a longer drive during the show. I'm coming back from Crawfordsville tomorrow. I plan on making a very early appearance on the JMB Takeover tomorrow night. Gotta go. JMB is standing by next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.